Hey guys, it's Jenna, and today I'm going to be doing a book review for a book that I was forced to read for school. I was actually pleasantly surprised by this book. It was way better than I expected it to be, and that book is A Separate Piece by John Knowles. I want to point out that this will not be a spoiler-free review. So just keep that in mind when I do this review. I will warn you when I'm going to spoil something, but yeah, you should just keep in mind that I will be spoiling the ending of this book. As I said earlier, I had to read this book for school. It was assigned in my language arts class, and of course, as most books that are assigned in language arts class, I was not expecting it to be as good as it was. But like I said earlier, I was pleasantly surprised that this book was as good as it was. I quickly became very attached to some of the characters, and I was immediately immersed in the storyline. It also made me appreciate historical fiction because this does take place during World War II. So if that kind of thing interests you, you may like this book. Another great thing about A Separate Piece is that there is a lot of symbolism and there are a lot of themes that we definitely went in depth with when we talked about it in language arts class. So it was really cool to kind of study it after reading it. My mom is about to vacuum, so if you can hear that in the background of this video, I apologize. She hasn't started yet, so you may not hear it yet, but if you do at some random point in time, then I'm sorry. One cool thing about this book is when the book opens, we learn that the narrator is actually the main character in the future, reflecting back on his past, which I thought was really cool. I don't know about you. The main character, or narrator, is Gene Forrester, and he is looking back on his old self from the future. And so basically the story opens with him going to his old boarding school from when he was young, a teenager. His boarding school's name was called the Devon School, and it was basically just a school for boys, and this certain time period happened to be taking place during the summer, which we will learn later represents adolescency. Just stick with me. As the main character is reflecting on his past, he is actually walking around the campus, and he stops at one important part, which is a tree outside beside a river, and when he is looking at this tree, it just so happens to be rainy and cold, which is a symbol. So remember that. As most flashbacks work, in the memory, Gene is standing before the very same tree, but he is alongside his friend, Finney, who is my favorite character. Oh my gosh, I might actually cry right now. At this point in the story, both of the boys are 16 years old, and they just so happen to be roommates as well as best friends. All of a sudden, Finney, which by the way is short for Phineas if you didn't know that, he has this great idea that he wants to jump from one of the limbs of the tree into a river which is below the tree. When Finney comes up with this idea, he and Gene just happen to be at the tree with their friend Leper, who that's an unfortunate nickname. So two other boys who aren't really that important. Of course, any normal human being would not want to jump out of the tree into the river because that's not smart. But Finney, on the other hand, decides that he is going to jump into the river from the tree limb, even if no one else did it, which he eventually forced Gene to do it as well because, you know, peer pressure, boys, that's what they do. When Gene finally gets the courage to jump into the river from the tree branch, there is this moment of celebration, and basically Gene and Finney now share this bond, as well as the fact that they're kind of roommates, and yeah. There are a few things you should know about Finney. For one, he is a major athlete. He is super athletic. He loves sports, and he also has this way about him that he can basically convince anyone to do anything, so he really gets away with anything. Some things you should know about Gene: that he is super scholarly, like everything is up here instead of like athleticism. Athleticism? Is that a word? Is that the word I'm looking for? I think it is. He is very intelligent and does well on everything, and he studies really hard, and even though he has this great scholarly ability, he is also very jealous of Finney and his abilities as well. But Gene and Finney's bond grows even bigger, and they form this club which involves them jumping out of the tree every single night, which Gene never gets used to. And they also try and convince other boys to jump out of the tree as well. And yeah, it's basically their kind of club, which they called the Super Suicide Society of the Summer Session. That's a crazy name, lots of alliteration. One day, Jean gets a bit concerned that maybe Finney is trying to sabotage his scholarly abilities and make him unable to become the head of the class or whatever, and he decides that he's trying to sabotage him. Did I already say that? Yeah, I did. Sorry. Because Jean feels this way now, he is very angry at Finney, and one time in the evening when they're about to jump out of the tree, Finney decides they should do it together, and Finney falls out of the tree and shatters his leg. I keep doing this because they're like quotes, like words they actually use in the book. As I said earlier, Finney is major athletic and everything he does revolves around sports, and now that he's broken his leg like this, sports are done for him. Basically, the summer session at Devon ends with Finney going back to his hometown in Boston to recuperate from his injury, and Jean goes to wherever he lives, which I don't remember if they mentioned or not. On Jean's way back to the school for the winter session, he decides to go to Finney's house in Boston and confess that he's the one that knocked him out of the tree, whether it was on purpose or not. I finished the book and I still don't know if it were on purpose or not. Finney will have nothing of this confession that Jean is trying to make. He does not believe him, he does not want to believe him, and basically, Jean just leaves. The only good thing about Jean returning to the Devon school alone is that now he has the whole dorm room to himself. Yay! With Finney's absence, there is a lot of building tension, and a lot of the boys decide that it might just be easier to enlist in the war than continue to study books. Even Jean becomes willing to enlist in the war, but when Finney does return, they build a bond together again that seems even more powerful than before. Jean realizes that Finney actually needs him to stay there at the Devon school, and that makes him so happy because all Jean wants is to be a part of Finney. That's important, remember that. Their bond forms even bigger than before, and Jean learns that it has always been Finney's lifelong dream to be in the Olympics, and now that he can't be an athlete, Finney wants Jean to be the athlete. Finney begins to train Jean for the Olympics, and everything is going well this way until their friend Leper, who I mentioned earlier, decides to enlist in the war. Leper is a bit of a naturalist, so this kind of shocks everyone. Everything's going well without Leper around until one day, Jean receives a telegram from Leper saying that he escaped from the military and he was at his hometown. I mean, in his hometown. At his hometown? My brain will not work today. Jean goes to visit Leper and finds that he's absolutely gone mad. Things are continuing to heat up at the Devon school, and the boys have a meeting to discuss whether Jean caused Finney's accident or not. So you might want to leave because I'm about to spoil some stuff. So yeah, if you don't want this book spoiled for you, or you want to read it yourself, or you're already reading it and you just haven't finished it yet, you should probably leave. This is your last chance to leave. I'm about to spoil this book for everyone. So yeah, keep watching if you're interested in what's happening and you don't plan to read it, or you already have and you know what happens. Yeah. Finney becomes so angry that these boys are bringing up this accident yet again, and he leaves in a tear-filled rage. Just a reminder, he's still on crutches. Crunches? Crutches. Crunches. Did I just say crutches! And so, as Finney tries to walk down the stairs, he kind of collides with the stairs and tumbles down the stairs and lands at the bottom of the stairs. Okay, major spoilers are about to happen here, so if you were planning to read this book, you should just go, just leave, okay? Okay, it's about to get real. Finney ends up having to have an operation to put his leg back together, but during the surgery, a bit of his bone marrow went through his veins and into his heart. I bet you can guess what happens next. This is when my annotations started being written in capital letters. Finney was my favorite character, and that was a terrible throw. Okay, so Finney's dead. Here are the last lines of that chapter. I did not cry then or ever about Finney. I did not even cry when I stood watching him being lowered into his family's straight-laced burial ground outside of Boston. I could not escape a feeling that this was my own funeral, and you do not cry in that case. This is definitely significant because it shows that Jean truly felt like he had become a part of Finney. So when Finney died, a piece of Jean died, and a piece of I died. Me. I died. Me. What? The last two chapters are about when Jean goes to war after Finney's death, and he talks about how he never killed anyone while he was fighting because he said Finney took away all his hostility. Y'all, I started crying in the middle of language arts class. Now that we've gone a little bit more in depth with the book, I have learned a lot more about the significance of certain parts, and it has been very interesting. I definitely suggest reading this book. I was so impressed with this writing and everything about it, and the characters, and how quickly you fell in love, and how well created they were. So I pray that each and every one of you who watches this video goes and picks up a copy of A Separate Peace by John Knowles. It has been so nice to read this book. Overall, I'd rate it 5 out of 5 stars because it definitely touched my heart, and I really enjoyed it. Go read this book. I love you all so much. Please give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it, and yeah, please subscribe if you haven't already. Bye! The main character, Jean, gosh, what? So we remember, this is really significant because as I said earlier, with all, Jean realizes that Finney actually really does need him, whether he knows it or not, and that makes Jean, the Devon school